Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Happy Wisdom for Your Wallet Wednesday. I'm going to give us a few minutes and then we are going to get started. I hope your day is going well. Oh, yes, I see someone else on here. Okay. All right, awesome. So we are live. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to Wisdom for Your Wallet Wednesday. So, today, before we get started, if you know anyone who would be blessed or empowered or needs wisdom for their wallet, please share. You can text them or you can message them or even tag us here in the chat. I'll wait a few moments and then we will get started. And thank you all for joining me on this journey. Why don't you also share where you're joining from in the chat? Let me know what city you're joining us from today. I am here in Delray Beach, Florida, and it has been cold. Yesterday, it was only 47 degrees. I did not leave the house. And then today, I got out, it was 54 degrees. So that was much nicer. What is it? I'm assuming it's a cold everywhere. But for us in Florida, anytime it drops below 60, it's catastrophic for us. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started with the teaching. So today, as I said, we are going to discuss the biggest misconceptions Christians have about money. Part two, God will provide so I don't have to have a plan. So, again, this is something that I actually discussed last week, but now that we are a bit more technologically savvy, we're going to go through it in more detail. So, I'm going to start with the question that I had asked before. I said that I am a quinquagenarian. Does anyone know what that means? And if you do, please answer in the chat. Submit your responses in the chat. Okay, well, it looks like no one is aware of what that is. Haven't seen any responses. But what it is it means I am in my youthful 50s. And the reason why I'm giving you my age range is because I want you to have some context as I discuss these three notable historic events that I would consider what I call wallet wake ups. So, first of all, the first event that I would consider a wallet wake up is September 11th, 2001. I'm sure all of us remember that. For me, I was in my early 20s and I was working in a high-rise office building in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was working for a company that's no longer in existence, interestingly enough. And the name of that, some of you may be familiar with it. It was WorldCom. I was on the 26th floor, and we were in a conference room watching the news when the unfortunate events occurred. And we were instructed to go home because everybody was in fear and nobody could concentrate that day. It was absolutely horrific. Now, what happened after September 11th, 2011? The stock market closed for 7 days. And when it opened, it absolutely plummeted. What else happened? TSA was created. Before TSA was created, we were able to travel and we were able to enjoy our travel. 1 second. But we were able to enjoy travel. There used to be no baggage charges. I'm sure some of you remember that. We actually used to get meals on flights. And in addition to all that, there were few restrictions of what you could put in your carry-on. What else happened? The Department of Homeland Security was created. Unemployment. The unemployment rate inclined to a total of 5%. Which is absolutely, at that time, that was astounding. And about 143,000 job losses were happening per month in New York City during those first 3 months. The nation was adversely affected as a whole. But think about it. What if you actually lived in the city during that time? What if you were one of the people whose jobs or businesses were no more? I mean, worst case, what if you were one of the people whose loved ones never came home? Would you have been prepared to take care of yourself and your family? The second event that occurred, March 2020, COVID. Now, what happened during COVID, I'm sure all of us remember because it wasn't that long ago. It was only 5 years ago. But the average unemployment rate in the United States at that time was 3.7% in 2019. For 2020, it went to 8.1%. Now, this was a significant increase, just as we saw what happened with COVID, which was for many of us unprecedented in our lifetime. Now, in August 2022, I was in New York for business talking to my cab driver, and I was asking him, what was going on. And he actually told me that he said, oh, well, business is almost back. It's about 90% back. So that was 2 years, over 2 years later. Actually, it was about 2.5 years later that they were still reeling from the events of COVID-19. Absolutely terrible. In addition to that, we know all of us had to shelter in place. That was extreme. That was pushed. The jab was pushed. Social media, and so I mean, in terms of social distancing, that was pushed. Masks were enforced. Companies were encouraged to comply. I remember personally, I was working for a company, and there was going to be a conference in San Diego, and it would have been my first conference with this company. I had been working with the company for about a year. And the HR or the VP reached out to me, and he said he wanted me to represent them at the conference. But all he needed, what did he need? He needed proof that I had been vaccinated. And I said to him, as much as I would love to go, and I would love to represent the company, I can't because I have not been vaccinated. And so he said, well, let me check with the president about this. And unfortunately, the president came back, and what did he say? Oh, sorry, we'll just have to send somebody else unless you agree to getting vaccinated. But again, as people are saying, my body, my choice. So I decided not to get vaccinated at all. The bottom line is, and many other people suffered, many healthcare workers, many people in larger businesses where this was being enforced, people were out of work, as we saw with a high unemployment rate. As much as 8.1%. So the bottom line is the government, the healthcare industry, and big business had a plan for we, the people, the government of the United States. And what I want to ask you today is, are you prepared economically, resourcefully, and mentally if such a thing were to happen again? Yes, Francine, I remember COVID as well. It was absolutely horrific. This other thing I wanted to discuss, another wallet wake up, the government shutdown. So far, this is the largest or the longest government shutdown in our nation's history. I believe we are at 43 days. That is a long time. You know, I actually went to the White House site and I got these statistics in my state of Florida since the shutdown. The gross state product impact, we're seeing a decline of 911 million each week, which is equivalent to 4 billion per month. We're seeing an increase in unemployment of about 2,900 workers. And in addition, in terms of federal workers affected since the shutdown, we're talking about 155,000, which is 1.6% of the state workforce that is furloughed or working without pay. And in spite of all that, guess what? Congress, the people we elected, are currently being paid. So guess what? The government still has a plan for we the people, regardless if you voted as a Republican or as a Democrat or an independent or a Green Party. We're all being affected by this government shutdown. Hopefully, that will be resolved this evening. But the point is, as we saw with 9/11, as we saw with COVID, the government rolled out their own plans and protocols. Big businesses has a plan to make money off of you. We saw Walmart get exceedingly rich. We saw the rise of these meal delivery companies, Instacart, DoorDash, Uber Eats, to name a few. The media has a plan to keep you distracted when these catastrophic events occur. And my question to you today, what is your plan? And if you don't have a plan, let today serve as your wallet wake up. So let's continue with that. My goodness, my goodness, my goodness. So how do we prepare for such unprecedented events such as COVID and the government shutdowns? There are three things that we need to do. Number one, we need to perceive the pattern. Number two, we need to position for provision. And number three, we need to proceed with a plan. So the first thing we need to do is perceive the pattern. And what I mean by that is observe market indicators. And when I say market indicators, I'm not talking about candlesticks, fundamentals, charts. Now, for those of you who already know how to do that, that is fantastic. I'm not one who's well versed in that, but if you are, please DM me because I'd love to learn more and have you here on this broadcast. But what I'm talking about are everyday occurrences that you see. For example, skyrocketing inflation on the grocery store, the scarcity of availability of certain items, or other items you go to the store and they are absolutely expired. They could be expired a year or 2 years ago and they're still selling them. So another thing, layoffs. UPS announced cuts of approximately 48,000 positions in October 25. Did you guys know that? Amazon began a new round of layoffs in late October 2025, planning to eliminate around 14,000 corporate roles. And Nestle announced 16,000 in job cuts, again, same month, October 2025. So my question to you is, on the local level, where you are living, what are the market indicators that you've noticed? If you've noticed anything, please share it in the chat. I know for me, where I am, I've noticed, for example, something as small as black olives. I like black olives. Yes, Francine, it is very unfortunate. And there's several more that are happening. But locally, I can say, for example, black olives. For the longest time, I used to buy black olives from the store. I love black olives. And they were only 99 cents. Now, as of this year, they've almost doubled in price. And that is extremely significant. And that's absolutely terrifying because they've been 99 cents for at least 4 years. So that's an example of something that I'm seeing in my local market. Another indicator in terms of perceiving the pattern that we have to look out for is inflation. Now, we all know inflation happens every year. Inflation has skyrocketed, though, and we are all getting less for our money. So in terms of inflation, if we look at the government calendar or calculator, I should say, U.S. labor and statistics basically show that if you had $100 in January 2020, now that $100, you need $192.42 in September 2025. So what does that mean? It means you have to have 92% more in order to purchase what you did in January 2020. That means if you go to the store today, you'd have to basically have $192 versus back in 2020, you would only have to have $100. So my question to all of you is, how many of you have seen a 92% increase in your income since 2020? If anybody has, please let me know what you're doing because we need to understand what you're doing to produce such an increase. Or even if you've seen a 92% increase on your business, let us know. The point is, we can't just turn a blind eye to these things when they're happening right in front of us and carry on with business as usual. Ecclesiastes 7:2 says, wisdom is a defense and money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge, that is, wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Type in the chat, #wisdom is a defense if you agree. Ecclesiastes 7:12 also says in another version, the complete Jewish Bible, for wisdom is a shelter and money is a shelter, but the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom keeps the one who has it alive. So again, it's important that we exercise wisdom in this time. And if you agree that it's important to exercise wisdom in this economy, type #perceive the patterns in the chat. Okay, the second thing we need to do is position for provision. That's right, wisdom is a defense. I agree 100%, Francine Brooks. Now, let me ask you all this question. Who remembers, or I should say, because if you're my age, you will remember what happened in September 2008. Does anyone want to share that in the chat? Okay, I don't see any typing, so I will let you all know. It is the financial crisis. Financial crisis, which it ended up being across the globe, but it hit us extremely hard here in the United States. So much so that the statistics indicate that it took more than 5 years to regain the 2007 peak. And that was achieved in May 2013. That is a long time. For me, let me just tell you a testimony. It's not a good testimony, but it's what could have been a testimony, a good testimony. I bought my condo in 2005. So that wasn't at the best time, but it could have been worse because it wasn't absolutely at the height of the market. But from 2005 to 2007, the value of my condo increased 54%. I was excited, even though I wasn't going to pull any equity out of it. I was just expecting, okay, this is going to continue, and my condo is just going to continue to increase in value, and eventually I will pull more money out. But guess what? By 2008, my condo was underwater, and I watched the price that I paid and the value of my condo decrease 87%. What does that mean? I was not positioned for provision, because if I had had the wisdom, which is a defense, I would have seen what I could have done to refinance before the market tanked. But I did not have the wisdom. I was a first-time home buyer. I stumbled into the process, and I was just happy to have my first piece of property. But my question is, where would I be if I had taken heed to those market indicators and instead of buying, simply put my money somewhere else or in a place where it could accrue interest? If I had exercised that wisdom, I could have bought 4 condos for the price of the one that I own now. 4 condos for the price of one. And I would be in a much more economically advantageous position. But you know what? You live and you learn. And from that experience, I realized going forward, I've just got to watch these indicators, these market indicators, and perceive the patterns. There are people who did that. An example, we know tech companies did that. We know big box retailers did. We know some of the big brands, I'm not going to name them, but some of the people that you buy from every day, they were positioned for provision. And not only were they positioned for provision during COVID, per the BBC News, more than 5 million. I said 5 million people across the globe became multimillionaires despite the economic damage from COVID-19. I was not one of those 5 million. I wish I was, but what if I had been positioned for provision? I could have been. Some of you actually may have been one of those people. And if you are, congratulations. We would love to hear your story here. But the question today is, will you be positioned to prosper when the next economic crisis or transfer of wealth occurs? Will you thrive or just merely survive? If you're going to thrive, type #thrive in the chat. Now, let's talk about the third concept that we need in terms of having to have a plan. The third is we need to proceed with a plan. So if you're one of the people who typed yes in the chat to thrive and not merely survive, what is the plan? What is your plan, number one? And number two, will you execute it? We see in scripture, Joseph had a plan. The evidence, Genesis 41. What did Joseph do? And you can go back and read that entire chapter. It's absolutely fantastic. But he interpreted Pharaoh's dream about the 7 lean kine and the 7 fat kine. He provided a solution. He was appointed second in command. and ruler over all of the land of Egypt in verse 43. Not only that, he implemented the proposed solution, and he did what? He proceeded with the plan. His proposed solution was in verse 34. He said to Pharaoh, "Let Pharaoh appoint officers over the land and take up the fifth part of the land of Egypt in 7 plenteous years, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities, and that the food shall be the store in the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through famine." So Joseph created a hedge against famine. Once it was approved by the ruler of the land, he implemented the solution and created a hedge, so Egypt was protected. What happened next? The first part of the prophecy came to pass. And in verse 47, we see, "In the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth handfuls, and he gathered up all the food 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up food in the cities, the food of the field, which is round about every city, laid he up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number." The second part of the prophecy came to pass. And the 7 years, type 7 years in the chat. The 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt, there was bread. What does that mean? Egypt was bountifully supplied because Joseph implemented the proposed solution, created a plan, and so he created a hedge. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, "Go unto Joseph, what he saith unto you, do." Now that's the first version of just do it. And the famine was all over the face of the earth, and Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came to Egypt. I'm going to read that again. All countries came to Egypt for Joseph to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the lands. So Egypt became the supplier to the nations because they implemented a plan where they saved up and stocked up instead of spending in times of plenty. Joseph created a storehouse. My question to you today: do you have a storehouse? Now, wisdom would say, if you do not have a storehouse, you need to start building your own storehouse. Work out the numbers and automatically have part of your check distributed to a money market. Do the research. Now, again, to remind you, this is educational information and inspirational information. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, an accountant, or an attorney, and nothing shared here should be taken as a professional financial investment or legal advice. You should always seek the counsel of a qualified financial professional before making any financial decisions. My goal on this channel, on this broadcast, is to equip you with the scriptural principles, the practical insight, and the confidence to make wise financial choices, and not to provide individualized financial recommendations. So what can you do in terms of creating your own plan besides starting to stock up and save and create a storehouse? One of the things you can do, watch what the wealthy are doing. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's firm, increased its liquidity to $156 billion. $156 billion liquid. Can you imagine? So they liquidated some of their assets, so they have cash on hand in case of emergency. Now, if the wealthy are liquidating, it might be a sign that we should also have cash on hand and maybe pull some out of the bank. Just something to consider. Number 2, land acquisition. Wealthy individuals and corporations privately hold about 60% of land in the US, and that's 1.3 billion acres. And guess who is the largest landowner in the United States? of farmland. I want to see if anyone puts it in the chat. Okay. The largest is Bill Gates. Yes, the Microsoft man. He is the largest owner with over 260,000 acres in private agricultural land. Look, God is not making any more land. So if there's an opportunity for you to buy land, if you can find a deal, that may be something that you might want to research and consider. Another thing is track and watch cryptocurrency. The dollar bill and the traditional currencies are not the only currencies these days. Emerging currencies have the opportunity for you to make a significant increase, significant return on interest on your money, or return on investment on your money. And also they can serve as a hedge against inflation and currency devaluation. Now, again, I'm not an expert and I'm not a professional financial advisor, but this is something, there's plenty of information on the internet where you can do the research. There are plenty of charts, plenty of sites where you can track certain cryptocurrencies and make a decision if this is something that you would consider investing in, and just use wisdom. Again, do the research, do the back end homework. Another area where you can look into precious metals. Same thing. This could be a hedge against inflation and currency devaluation. The value of gold has increased over 113% in the last 5 years. That is extremely significant. So it's risen from approximately 1900 in the late 2019 to over 4,000 per ounce. 4,000. Can you imagine? 4,000 per ounce in late 2025. Now, silver, the 5-year change is between 99% to 100. So there is a reason why these precious metals are rising. And it's not just gold and silver. There are other precious metals that you might want to investigate. But I'm just giving you this as an example. And the final plan that you can do some research about and potentially and implement, which is something that you can do immediately, is what? Reduce unnecessary spending. I will get into that at a later date, but obviously this is something that you can do in terms of taking a look at your finances, look at what's going out and what's coming in, what makes sense to reduce, especially during this sensitive economic time. Now, I'm going to be having a masterclass on this where I will be discussing a basic plan I can help you set up to thrive, as we've talked about. And that's going to be on December 2nd. And that's a Tuesday at 7:15 p.m. Details will be forthcoming soon, but in the meantime, mark Tuesday, December 2nd, 7:15 on your calendar. It's going to be about an hour long. So that being said, Ezekiel 13:10 says, even because they have seduced my people, saying, peace, and there was no peace, and one built up a wall, and lo, others daubed it with untempered mortar. Why am I reading this passage to you? Because many times the media, yes, I'm bringing it up again, the media will say there's nothing wrong, everything's going great, the economy is fine, look at these job numbers, they're excellent. But as we said, look at the market indicators in your immediate area. And what are you seeing? If you are seeing inflation as I am at the grocery store, if you are seeing wildly fluctuating prices at the gas pump, if you're seeing the cost of goods and services increase, it's an indicator no matter what the pundits are saying, no matter what the prognosticators are saying. And this is why we said earlier, wisdom is a defense. So that being said, God will provide. He is faithful. He watches over his word to perform it. But that doesn't mean you're exempt from having a plan, especially when warnings have been going out, not just in terms of people speaking about what is to come, but you actually seeing what's happened over the past year to 2 years. So what are you going to do to get this plan constructed? Number one, you're going to perceive the pattern. Number two, you're going to position yourself for provision. And finally, you're going to proceed with the plan. Remember, obedience provokes the blessing. As per the scripture, Isaiah 119, if ye be willing and obedient, ye shall eat the good of the land. Therefore, you still have to plan for provision. But even with that plan, remember, there is a protocol for provision. Now, before we close out, if any of you are in South Florida and desire to press into the spiritual side of this plan, there is a prophetic protocol for provision. And there on Saturday, November 15th, Flame of Fire International is hosting an event at 9:30 a.m. where they will be basically not only discussing this, but helping you in terms of creating a prophetic protocol for your provision. I have the details in the chat, but I'll just read out the address. It's 1270 Northwest 165th Street in Miami, Florida, 33169. And you can also just click on the information below if you want any more information, or you can also DM me. So that's about it for this Wisdom for Your Wallet Wednesday. Thank you all so much for joining me for this broadcast and the previous broadcast. I sincerely appreciate you sticking around and listening. And thank you all for the wonderful feedback I've received. My plan is to continue to go live. My goal is to go live again next Wednesday, as long as the Lord says the same. And if this information blessed you or helped you in any way, type hashtag provisioned in the comments and make sure you share, because there's someone who might be enlightened by this information. There's someone whose mindset might shift from being a consumer to being someone who is not only a producer, but someone who is going to plan and be the Joseph for their neighborhood or the Joseph for their family. In any event, I will see you all here next week, where we will continue with the next part of money misconceptions. Everyone, you have a great day, and I will see you next week. Once again, thank you, and God bless you.